far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 women growing strong. 100 women where you belong. You stood tall and now you see, you have reached your destiny. Woman, woman.
As people of African descent, we offer this land recognition in solidarity with the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the efforts and deliberate intentions toward decolonization. As people of African descent, we acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that sustains us, express deep gratitude to its indigenous peoples, and pledge to honor our dignity and divinity that ultimately connects us all. By Kay Johnson. Welcome to 100 ABC Fireside Chats. 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women is a bold project initiated by co-authors and co-founders, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, Dr. Denise O'Neill Green, and Donna Jones Simmons. Our mission is to celebrate and archive the professional accomplishments of trailblazing Black women from all across Canada. The goal is to create an ever-expanding database available for current and future generations via print media, public and private libraries, as well as our website, which is www.100abcwomen.ca. In addition to our fireside chats on topics that matter to our communities, such as education, healthcare, entertainment, creative arts, trade union, and so much more, we offer biennial book launching galas and biannual symposiums. The co-authors and co-founders would like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for attending today's fireside chat. We know that you will find these sessions educational and inspirational. So sit back, relax, and hear from our brilliant and talented honorees. Good day, everyone. I'm Donna Jones Simmons, co-author, co-founder, and the architect of the 100 ABC Women project, as well as the executive producer of our fireside chats. Special thanks to our incredible technical support team, our moderator and panelists, who are the drivers behind our weekly inspirational conversations. Let me now turn you over to our moderator, who will introduce herself to you, as well as today's topic. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yvette Blackburn, and thank you for taking the time to join us today for this excellent conversation, which is women in leadership, women in politics. We're going to go through a wide array of conversations, and these women are going to provide to you their insights, their knowledge, their expertise to help to guide those who are also interested in stepping into these arenas and spaces. Without further ado, I'll start with my first lady, which many of us in Ontario have already know well, Miss Kathy McDonald, who is a current trustee with the Peel School Board. But Kathy, please let everyone know who you are.
Well, I would start by saying what I'd like my tombstone to read. So I would hope it would say that I'm a wife and a mother of 4 change makers who was deeply committed to dismantling anti-Black racism within not only the Peel District School Board, but within Ontario. I would like to be known for my unapologetic belief in the fact that all children, including Black children, can thrive when given the right tools. And if they are learning in a trauma-free, racist-free educational system. I also do a lot of work in poverty reduction. As also, I think that kids in poverty often have low expectations set for them. They're often the schools that are in areas that are not as wealthy, tend to be under-resourced. And again, I'd like to think that my work is changing that in Peel and one day across the entire educational system where we see equitable distribution of resources. And programs like the We Rise programs, I do a lot of work in that in terms of alleviating the disproportionate outcomes in student achievement for Black students, as well as human trafficking. Again, these are issues that are very important to me. So,
very good.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you. And to you, Ms. Akosua Bonsu, coming from Winnipeg into our airspace here, please tell us about you.
Yes, thanks, Yvette, and good afternoon, everybody. As Yvette just mentioned, my name is Akosua Bonsu, and I'm joining you all today from Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'll start a little bit with who I am, and then Kathy, I like your theme of what you'd like to have on your tombstone, so I'll continue that. I'm a policy analyst with the provincial government here, the government of Manitoba, and one of my key roles, or the space that I occupy, is that relationship between politics, economics, and health. So for me, when I pass, I know that one thing that I would want to be remembered for is the passion that I have for the intersectionality of these areas, especially since they're areas where we're traditionally underrepresented, right? Politics, economics, access to quality healthcare, access to the right treatments at the right times. These are things that unfortunately a lot of our people are still struggling with. So as part of that work, I've also spearheaded some health policy projects and advocated for fair, equitable healthcare for all, primarily young Canadians, but for all Canadians regardless of postal code. So it's a pleasure to be joining you all here today, and I look forward to our discussion.
Fantastic. And without further ado, so Ms. Candice Kochapa, you're joining us. We know that you're on the road at the moment, and we thank you very, very much. So please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having me with you this afternoon. It is indeed a pleasure to be here. So my name is Candice Kochapa, and I am the founder and executive director of Developing Young Leaders of Tomorrow Today. As my colleagues already spoke of, I am also a wife and mother. I have 2 young girls, ages 10 and 4. And I also believe in empowering our young people to be the next generation of leaders. So I believe in pouring in, because if we don't pour in, we can't expect our young people to grow and thrive and be the leaders that we expect them to be. My work surrounds in a lot of ways, education to employment outcomes for Black young people specifically. And our focus is on niche fields that we know traditionally there's underrepresentation for Black people. That's fields around STEM, so cybersecurity, and then international affairs. So everything that relates to how decisions are made at the international level, and then how it comes down to domestic level. So what happens in our country, also what happens in our communities. I watch that, and I create innovative solutions on how to address the challenges that we see on a daily basis in our communities, but I also make the connection to the decisions that are made at the international level. So I'm very pleased to be with you all today.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to springboard off of that into our first set of questions to say, like, so as mothers, how are you juggling the role of being a mother and having to deal with your, executive leadership roles or political roles that you're in? And then as a young person, how are you dealing with the demands of life and social interactions and other pieces that are happening? So Kathy, I'll go to you first with regards to how are you managing and juggling everything?
So given the fact that I'm not a professional juggler, I think sometimes you feel like you have to be one to navigate both the demands of basically being a social advocate with motherhood. But one of the key tools that I use, I try to include my children in my work because after all, it's benefiting them. And I think it's important for them to understand and to see what mommy does on a day-to-day basis. And I think it heightens their appreciation for education. They appreciate other, because in my journey, I take them with me and let them meet other people who are doing this work. And I think it gives them almost a sense of responsibility to excel, right? Against all, despite of, right? In spite of. I think it, by including my children too, it helps them to be leaders within their school communities and bring other students along with them. So I think an important part is including the children in the work, as well as there are times when you just have to shut down and say no. So I prioritize times when, and then, even the choices I make too in how, the jobs and the demands that I take on, because I have to ensure that my children are not suffering as a result of my work. Because as Jacqueline Onassis says, what's the point of you excelling if your children, and you fail at being a mother, right? If your children are suffering. So it's very important to me that my kids do not suffer as a result of my career and my advocacy. So I also try to ensure that all my appointments, I weave in around their obligations too, because I always say I'm a mother first, right? And even after this job is gone, I'd still be a mother, right? Sure. So I center like that. And second, the last point I'd make too is self-care. It is so important to take care of yourself because, it's not lost on me that if I pass away, Peel will not fall apart. Peel is still going to go on. The education and the ministry will not fall apart. They will replace me in the shot of an eye. I may get a wreath or two for my family, right? But the phone calls will stop probably a week, give it a month for sure, right? So I'm cognizant of that fact. And I really try to ensure that I practice self-care.
Good. Candice, for yourself?
I think I echo very much what Kathy just said. So because I work so closely with you, and I have young girls myself as a mother, my work really centers around making sure that I'm being the best role model that my children can see. Because when they see what mommy does, as Kathy said, they also determine whether that's exactly what they want to do or if they're going to shy away from this type of work. And so having them around, I take them to many events and activities that I have to attend and make sure that, associating with people is normal for them. Walking into any room, talking to anyone, no matter what level of leadership or what level just being a civil society member, whatever position, whatever position that they meet people at, that they see that, you know what, people are just people and I can engage with them. For me, that's me setting the stage for my children and for them to see the normalcy of the work that I do. And I also, as a mother, how I manage, how I balance is I listen to my children. They are my biggest critics as well as my biggest champions. So they will tell me, Mom, you did a great job there. And I pick up the cues that they leave me. Mom, you didn't do a great job there. I learn from what they tell me. So I also make time to just be silly with my kids, with my girls. You know, I talk about it all the time. I play Super Mario games with them. You know, I play video games with them. We go outside, we play hockey together, we play curling together, all of those things, because it's so important to make time to just be mom and kids, you know, just be mom and, you know, whatever else my home life requires, right? So yeah, I think that's it right now.
Good. And Akosua, what do you do for your juggling to manage being in this realm?
That is a good question, and I think I'm still figuring that out. I'm not a mother yet, so hopefully one day, some days it feels like I'm still trying to raise myself. I really want to capitalize on that both Kathy and Candice have mentioned, is the idea of self-care. So for me, for example, I'm still desperately trying to hang on to my 20s. Next year will be a milestone birthday, so keeping that in mind, but also wanting to make sure that I achieve the things that I want to achieve, it's a big task. Recently, unfortunately, it wasn't until fairly recently when the pandemic hit, when I realized the importance of being able to slow down and of being able to take care of myself, because that's how I am then best able to manage the responsibilities that are on my shoulders. So, you know, and you'll hear folks say that the pandemic, when it was first announced, helped people see different aspects of life differently. And for me, that was one of them. I can run around every evening of the week. I can be part of meetings 8 days a week. I can be working 12-hour days, but it's all for naught if I'm not able to put my best foot forward. And if I'm not in a space where I can contribute meaningfully. So that has been chief, I guess, in trying to manage all of the demands that are on my shoulders. And as I said, you ladies as well can very much relate to that. But it's been helpful though. Those times also self-care allow for a lot of reflection. So making sure that I'm putting my energy towards things that I want it to be going towards, making sure that I'm also still taking care of and still responsible for those that I have in my life and in my circles and not leaving them behind. And Candice, I think you put it nicely, and Kathy also mentioned this, the idea of for you guys being a mom first, but the idea of not leaving those closest to you behind as you try and achieve your goals. It's important that they come along on the journey with you. So lots of different ideas, but Yvette, in short, I would say I'm still working it out, still trying to figure out how I manage things.
Listen, enjoy your youth. You hear? Enjoy it. I'll tell you that doing this work and journey, trust me, it will tax you. So you keep that youth and enjoy. So let's delve into this, right? So in the sense of then, and we're talking about women in leadership, the question then becomes, so in leading right now in the spaces that you occupy, are we really leading or are we just representative bodies in the spaces where we sit? So Akosu, I'm going to go back to you. And in the sense of as the youth also within the realm of where you're at the city, you're at the provincial level per se, how are you seeing women in leadership? Not Black women at this particular moment, because I want to delve back to that a little bit later, but just in the sphere of when we say women in leadership.
That is a good question. And I sense that this will come up also for the other two ladies, but occupying those roles doesn't necessarily mean that we are able to lead, right? So same for young women as well. You might hear that an organization has 50% or 60% women. You might hear that maybe an organization, their head is a woman, right? Whether that be a CEO, whether that be a president. But sometimes thinking generally as women, we still don't have that opportunity to really be able to lead the way we want to. Part of it could be the expectations that are on our shoulders coming from society, right? And what they might see us as being capable or incapable of doing. Part of it might be even on our own selves, our expectations on ourselves, and still feeling that pressure of now you're in this position, but you're occupying a position within a structure that wasn't meant to see you succeed, right? A lot of our organizations, of course, started off with men at the head, right? Or with men at the table. Getting women there, we're doing a very good job, but to your question, Yvette, I think there's still more we can do so that women are actually leading and not just sitting at the table.
Correct. So Kathy, in that, and I just want to clarify for people though, when I say leadership, I'm going to bring us to the politics part. We're going to get there. So Kathy, as you're seeing in the sense as in the leadership right now, how do you see it? Are we just occupying space at the moment?
Well, I think in terms of, I speak about leadership in education, I think a lot of the women there are doing more than occupying space. However, when you look at, it's not a matter of, I think it's more the personality of the woman, because a lot of people put women there to occupy space, right? However, a lot of the women in education, I think because they are, as teachers and educators, were trying to empower students. So I think a lot of the women are empowered. But if you look, for example, at boards across the province, right? The teaching staff overwhelmingly are women. However, when you look at senior management, so you look at directors, you look at the associate directors, superintendents, the disproportionality of male leaders in those upper senior management roles is quite alarming. So again, if you look at even as the trustee side, when you go into, I remember getting onboarded into the board and being told by a male, oh, don't worry, I'll speak for you, right? And this is 2014, I'm not talking in the 1950s, right? And that same, the concept, like, oh dear, poor helpless woman. So I think the mentality of a lot of men in these leadership roles is a different topic for a different day. But I think a lot of women are working really hard to change that and occupy the space. Being told, I remember being told when I first started again, after, I would say, my major, stepping into the disruption part of the journey, and being told by a male lawyer that, oh, dear, this is going to pass and nobody's going to pay attention to it. It's condescending, sort of helpless. I've gone to delegate at the Ontario Municipal Board and being told, don't worry, we're going to have to ask you some hard questions. So it's the attitude of the males in leadership. That's, I guess, another topic for another day.
Mm-hmm. So Candice, your perspective.
So I would 100% agree. I think I take it from the angle of, for the most part, women are leading. When I speak now, I'm going to speak of the area that I'm in. So specifically relating to international affairs and women who are taking up space, not just being given space. So, for example, when I look at Canada's representatives to the World Trade Organization, Canada's representative for women, peace and security, Canada's representative for the military, like in all those positions, these are women. And for the most part, these are women of color. And traditionally, we would not see ourselves represented in these areas. But these very strong women are taking the space. They're not just waiting for the opportunity to be given to them. They're going in and saying, I belong here. It is my time to lead. And the interesting thing about it is, it's the intersectional lens that these women are applying to the executive roles that they occupy, right? So for myself, I don't have a background in international affairs. I have a background in social work, but I created a course called If You Can't Lead, if you can't beat them, lead them. And what does that mean? It simply means that, as Tyler Perry once said, you know, if nobody is welcoming you at the table, you bring your own tools and you build your own table. And so for a lot of women, myself included, we're not waiting for someone to just hand us an opportunity to sit at the table. We're making sure that we are bringing our own tools, walking with our own hammers and nails and boards to build that table if the space is not available, right? And so I also feel like women are also looking around the table and seeing, you know, that not a whole lot of women are at that table. So they're bringing those along with them and saying, bring your expertise too, because it's valuable in this space. And I don't want to be the only one here. I don't want to be tokenized. I don't want to just be the one who, you know, I speak monolithically about what happens in women's experiences, because we recognize that women from different lived experience, different, backgrounds, ethnicity, all of those things have different lived experience to share and lived experience to share. So welcoming other women into the space, championing other women in this space opens up even greater space for us to tangibly and intentionally lead.
Okay, so you've delved a bit into the other area where I was going to go, and it's interesting to hear some of your points. So when we speak about, so right now we know that we're on a big EDI component. I'm not going to talk about anti-racism, right? So that'll be, Kathy, another day when we really delve into it, but the majority of individuals are not anti-racism. Okay, we're striving to get there, but we're so still stuck on having people learnt in the area of EDI. So as we talk about women in politics, right, you mentioned some spheres to which we do have leaders and people that are Black in representation in spaces, but are we truly implementing the frameworks of EDI in our institutions, systems, and spaces and organizations and business where we're at? Because to be akin to us does not mean you are akin to us, right? So where are we? And let's talk about now politics, whether the spaces that you're a civil servant or the space that you actually hold a position of an MPP, MP, city councilor, trustee, whichever the framework of it. What are we then as Black women in politics or having a role to play in shaping politics? Are we truly navigating that path and walking the walk, and we're not just doing the talk? And then how are we holding the institutions that we're at to account? Right. So Kathy, I know yours, but okay, so let me go to Akosua. Let me hear your perspective, because from your inroads, what do you see? Where are we? Where do we need to go?
Sure. So again, I am in the civil service, so politics adjacent, but working with governments, whoever the government of the day is, working to bring their policies forward, working to build the programs that they want, etc. For us here in Manitoba, we actually, believe it or not, just elected our first Black MLAs, members of the Legislative Assembly, in 2019. So prior to that, right, and again, as Kathy said, this is not going back to the 1950s. This is very, very recently. The year before the pandemic is when we first had Black people representing Manitobans at the legislature. So we are making incredible strides just by getting ourselves to those spaces. I can also say that for me, bringing that EDI lens is happening. It is happening. It is a bit of a slow shift, though, because of course, sometimes when we maybe approach the structures and the institutions that have been in place for so long and that have benefited many other people in certain ways, when we come to those and we say, you know what, we need to make some changes, not necessarily to the detriment of anybody, but just so that we can bring everybody along with us on that journey, it can get uncomfortable. So I know personally for my department, it's been very, very good to see that that is actually one of their focuses. So that's something that department leadership has taken a look at and has said that this is something that we need to do better at. This is something that we could improve upon. So in that sense, it's fantastic, because then the staff that are going through these EDI training, the staff that are able to implement that in their work, it shows through in the policies and in the briefing notes and in the programs that we build. Though we don't do all of that in isolation, being able to bring that lens and being able to shape our proposals with that in mind will also then help bring others along with us on that journey, right? It'll help others see, maybe they're seeing more of themselves in what we are bringing forward. Maybe they're seeing that there's a spot for them here because of the inclusive nature, whatever it is. So we have begun that journey. Of course, as always, there's more that we can do, but I would say at least here in Manitoba, within that civil service political piece, we're on our way. We're on our way.
And Candice, you touched a bit, but give us a little more.
For sure. So I can say that, you know, there's a few things that I've celebrated in Ontario for a while, but one of the things that Ontario is doing well, quietly doing well at, is actually putting a whole lot more people of color, and let me be specific, a whole lot more Black people in positions of leadership. And why am I celebrating that? Because our communities have been advocating for representation and policy decision making for decades, right? But Ontario is quietly listening, and, you know, again, not a whole lot that I've celebrated in Ontario at the public policy level, but right now there are deputy ministers who are, especially Black women, where 5 years ago we did not see this. Also at the, you know, anti-racism directorate for the province, there's a host of Black leaders who are changing policies, who are making decisions, who actually have power, you know. So I think there's a lot to celebrate, but I also think that it doesn't mean that the work stops. Because if we just, you know, are happy with what is happening right now and we say, okay, you know, we've achieved or we've arrived, then it really is quickly that you see that digression happen. So for us, the work never stops. We need to continue to bring more along. That means that we're investing in our young people. We're letting our young people see that we're leading, so that they can in turn feel that leadership is the place for them to be. So right now, celebrate, yes, but keep on forging ahead, because we can't let up.
Okay, we'll come back on a few of those points. So, but Kathy.
Yeah.
Let's see your
So
perspective.
that was a multifaceted question, but I'll start by saying, just before I delve deep into the question, when I think of people like Selena Caesar Shivans, Jody Wilson-Raybould, and Jane Philpott, right? And I think of these three women who took on the prime minister of the country, right? And I don't think a few years ago you'd see women standing up, right? And on points of principles and dare to challenge such authority. So that gives me hope. I think of the shoulders on who I stand. I think of, and some are men, but I think of women like Zanana Kande, Bev Solomon, Valerie Steele, right? Women who are in the trenches that have paved the way for us. And I know it seems like, oh my gosh, nothing has really changed. When you look at, for example, in education, the Stephen Lewis report, last year was last June, 30 years old, right? And you say, really, what has changed for Black students, right? But I remember when I met Martin Luther King III in February, and I was speaking to him about how do you keep positive? And you know, when it's so frustrating that you think that we're actually regressing compared to, you know, what, where our rights are or where we should be. And he highlighted the importance of celebrating each little inch we move forward, right? Because it's an inch forward to progress and to, you know, totally eradicating anti-Black racism. And you have to be hopeful that one day this will occur, unless you won't, you just give up. Like, why bother if you just think it will never happen, right? And you have to, and whilst it seems as a daunting task, we have to make sure we're making little increments. And I don't know if I'd say celebrate, because celebrate means, yay, we're in my, you know, some people may think, oh, we're where we need to be and, you know, all is fine. So I would just say we acknowledge, the little progress we make, and we keep on moving forward. And we're at a very interesting time in our history where we have never seen the sort of constant access to the 24/7 rage and backlash for EDI work. They're allowed, before it was like a fringe group, media controlled what you heard, what you saw, but it's almost like constant, especially to the people doing the work, right? You can have, the amount of, as a school board trustee, and I'm not talking like the prime minister of the country, because you expect, okay, the prime minister of the country will get death threats, will get a school board trustee, the amount of hate that you get on social media, even from within the system, you have staff attacking me that are upset about the work that's being done, right? Or if you're not doing it how they think it should be done. They hate the death threats at a school board trustee level just because the appearance of the fact that, suddenly Black children, or because of the work you're doing, you look at that almost like this oppression Olympics that's happening there. What about me? You have people who are anti everything, right? And we're at a very interesting time in our society for women in general, and especially Black women doing EDI work, right? And I think that it is also another thing we have to remember, whilst we have a lot of people in positions of power that we have never seen before, and I can think of, Patrice Barnes, who used to be a trustee, right, is in power, and Charmaine Williams. I think those are the two women you're speaking about, who is from Brampton, two women that I know, and I know they're really committed to their work. However, there are a lot of people that, and I also think is important, another thing that I think is important, that you have people in all political stripes, right? Because whether or not we like it, whatever party is in power, they're going to have a minister of whatever. So it's important to get all, Black people at every government party, at every level, at every board table. So I think that's important. But another thing we have to consider, that there are a lot of people that are in positions of power, not necessarily because, and to coin Yvette's phrase about skin folk and kinfolk, they were there to justify their racist actions. So there are a lot of those people that are still in positions of power, that if you are coming in to do EDI work, you're up against those people who are justifying to the powers that be why, people who are doing EDI work, they're crazy. They're these woke, or, whatever term of the day they're using, right? So we have to be mindful of that too.
So Kathy, as you touched on some key points, and that's why I just wanted to try to, yes, we have, and yes, be happy that we have the numbers we have within positions. But if those individuals are sitting in the seats of power, do not shift change, we have made no growth. It is only one individual that has ascended to a point. But many of the people are very comfortable in their seat and will not shift within the organization. So when I talk about the fact that we are not at anti-racism work, it's problematic. And to what Kathy's saying, the external voices that are ramping up and creating the othering of our statements or the actions that have been put forward, it becomes very problematic. So, Candice, I hear you about to celebrate, but in many times I just have to reel back, because you can't celebrate when there's the people there that are still being the gatekeepers that look like you and I, right? But as we go forward and we talk about that, okay, how do we, so now that we see in this sphere, and whether from, Manitoba, looking from this perspective, we have many individuals who are now stepping up into the political world to run. In this case, we're talking about women. So women are putting their feet forward because they're seeing that we have made inroads, right? There is the possibility, and to Kathy's point, all political stripes, whether you're conservative, you're liberal, you're political, you're Green Party, and independent, we have people seeing that. But how do we support as a collective? When we talk about our numbers, we want to continue to say, many people say that, oh, we have to strategically vote. No, we do not. But right? That because when you think about the numbers, you will have five white women running. Okay, and if you have 5 Black women running, why do we always go, well, not all 5 can run, right? So we think about the numbers, because isn't the 5 white women, aren't their numbers being split also? Or Do we need to be more of a collective in saying, okay, put people forward, but let us find a way that if we gather, we start to see that the numbers aren't going as many between X, Y, and Z, but yet A and B are doing extremely well. Do we have that conversation to say, okay, how do we in the end make sure the votes land at a particular spot where we can really get our person through that door, right? So that becomes part of the conversation. If I just think even of Toronto right now, so Akuswa, not to put you out there, but hopefully you're paying attention to what's happening with the mayoral race, let's just say, of Toronto. We have 7 Black candidates. Of the 7 Black candidates, we have 3 strong Black females that are running, that have, where the question now becomes, who and how, or what do we do, or how are we splitting off? But just even in the larger context about Canada and people putting in their names into the hat, how do we as a greater collective really support? Because it's easy to say, yeah, man, run. Everybody needs to run. We have an open democratic system that everybody runs. But what do we do when we stop to look and say, okay, if we even look on the screen, Yvette, Kathy, and Candice are running in the same riding, who do we support? Right? When do we look and stop and say, okay, yes, all 3 want to run. Now let us be strategic and place them off from each other, right? Rather than lumping the 3 strong candidates in one riding or one ward or one municipal federal riding. So ladies, let me hear your input. Kathy, you went last. I'm gonna let you go first this time here.
So I think that 2 things have to happen. One, and it depends on the level of government you're running for, right? Because if you're speaking about a person's political belief or ideology, that may influence who you're going to support, right? Municipal politics is slightly different in that it's not sort of aligned to a party, right? So you have to look at the person. And I personally, I am not a party, like a diehard party. You have some people, they are one particular party, and it doesn't matter what happens, they support this party till they die, right? I remember running as a school board trustee, and when I went to speak to a Black lady, she said, from me born and grew, is only Trudeau get me vote. And I'm like, I'm running for a trustee. It has nothing to do with Trudeau, right? So you have people like that. But I think it's important to look at the person. Because even within a party, if you get somebody elected, right, from the community and they go into a party, what are they going to do with that position and power? Because if I see you as a weak individual, and as you say, Yvette, you got elected, but then what? How are you helping my community, right? Because there are people that are elected and I'll call them up and I'd say, hey, XYZ, and they do nothing. They don't, some of them don't even return my call. And these are people with skin color like me, right? So I think it has to do with, even outside of the party politics, the actual individuals. I think it's really incumbent on voters to get to know the track record of that person, to get to know, because when you get into that space, because really, I would rather have a white female or white male in a position that is willing to support initiatives to help Black children than have a Black person in the position who is actually fighting against initiatives to help Black children. And we have people like that. And you figure, oh, yeah, oh yes, we do, right? And I can tell you, even from experience, right? There are people there who you'd be surprised, you put a motion or you put policies, or you try to put policies through, and the biggest opponents of policies that are benefiting, for example, hiring of Black staff, targeted hiring of Black staff, initiatives that's going to help our children, like having a pool of dedicated occasional teachers who will go to fill the schools that nobody wants because they're full of Black children, right? And it's Black people that are opposing these initiatives. And hey, my white Muslim Sikh colleagues are willing to support it. I'd rather have those people at the table if they're understanding the importance of EDI work, the importance of dismantling anti-Black racism, which I would argue that when, and I think racism will never even be eradicated until you eradicate anti-Black racism, right? So I think it's important not only to be looking at skin color, but when you put thinking of women in politics, you want to look at the track record of that person, right? Is that person bold enough to challenge the status quo, right? And that's really we need to focus on when we are thinking of women in politics.
Hold that, we'll come back, circle back to that. So Akosua?
Yeah, and I just wanted to speak, Kathy, to exactly what you said. Again, as was mentioned previously, the structures that are in place right now are not necessarily structures that were set up for us to succeed. So we need people within these spaces who are going to take that torch and run with it. We need people who have that passion to be making a change in their communities, to be bringing EDI ideas and frameworks with them in their work. We need those people who are actually going to stand up and say, you know what, no, the way things have been done in the past, it's not right. We need to move forward with fresh and new ideas. So exactly that, Kathy, exactly that. Taking a look at the people who are running and seeing who will be able to make the world, or to make the province, to make the city, to make the country, whatever the field is, who would be able to take up that challenge? Who is going to stand up and move our people forward? That is key.
Candice?
100% agree with the previous comments. I'm going to take it again from a different angle. I'm going to say that we need representation at every single decision-making level. So while I support women to run for elected office, I will say that there's also opportunities in politics that are not elected. So what I'm speaking of is their positions in the Senate. What percentage of our women, Black women, racialized women, are actually pursuing appointments at the Senate level? You know what I mean? When you're in also at the executive level of Parliament. So how many of our deputy ministers are actually women who are racialized, who have those lived experiences outside of being, on the front line of politics, because we know the vitriol that Black women especially face. Myself personally, I said I would never run for public office. I would never run for elected office. Why? Because the level of vitriol that Black women especially face right now, I'm not willing to put my family out there like that. I'm not willing to put my community, the level of, I have a right to be in your business. I have a right to all of that the public feels entitled to when Black women run for elected office. I'm not willing to give up that much power to my life. But what I would do is I would go for appointed office. And I would say, for women who are looking to change policies in that way, be diverse in what we're trying to do. Be diverse, be strategic. So if I know, Yvette, if I know you are running for municipal office, and I know that at the provincial level, there's also an election coming up, be strategic. Don't split the vote. Don't let the public choose between you or me. Let the public see that we are represented at every single level. So every single one of us, our names on the docket for something else. It means that we are not only sharing power, but we're diversifying where we're represented. That's really, really important, because for our communities, we think, yes, we do split votes. We want to vote liberal just because our grandparents, that's what they did every day of their life. You're going to vote conservative because they're going to do this, or whatever the case is. I remember right before the election, the provincial election, the last one, and I got on one of the calls. They were talking about, it was all the Black candidates. And I asked the question, I said, what are you going to do as a party? Liberal, Green Party, NDP, the Conservatives are going to win. And this is your issue. What are you going to do to make sure that our community issues keeps in the mainstream of conversation? And none of the candidates could think about it. And again, these were all Black candidates. And I said, this is what we have to think about. We can't just think, oh, let me win for my party, let me get my seat, and then we'll see how it goes. We can't think that.
But Candice, to the point of appointments though, and to what you're addressing, you have to remember whether it's to the public secretariat, for the Senate, whichever way you apply, it still comes down to the party in power, those individuals to whom they like, not about who is qualified, it's who they like or deem is more adjacent to their thinking and perspective is who gets put into it. Like I hear what you're saying, but we also have to be very reticent and mindful of the fact as to whom we see get picked out of our communities that are sitting in these appointed positions. And to what Kathy was saying is the fact, like to the point, we have people who look like us, but are not doing nothing for us. They are not, to your point, they're not advancing any policies, procedures, hiring, community funding. These things are not being done, right? So I hear what you're saying, that yes, diversify the positions to which we apply, and we have to do a better job of informing the public as to, you don't have to run for election or for elective office. There are civil servant roles, there are appointment roles, there is all of this. But it's very important to also acknowledge that piece, that it comes down to Senate. That's the prime minister and his closer network as to who they're really going to say goes there. And we look at who have been put there. You want to ask the question as to, when we think about who is now sitting at the public service or secretariat positions of all these boards that get paid a certain stipend, you got to go, When we look at who's sitting at some of the various police services boards or whatever we have, it's that part, right? Because it's not people who are advocates. It's not advocates that are getting appointed. It's not the people who've been doing the groundwork that's been appointed. It's people who have been plucked from obscurity that might be holding a title or may have just appeared in the public eye in the last 4 years because they got money, that you're hearing and seeing them being allotted with awards and funding and titles. And it's like, where the heck have these people been for the real heavy lifting or the hard work, right? But so go ahead, say your point.
Can I say something? 100%, I'm in the vein with you. I'm in the vein with you. But here's the addition that I want to put to this is, we recognize that, as right off the bat, you said, not all skin folk is kinfolk. We know this. Kathy said that. We know this, right? Here's the thing. We can see all these people who just propped up out of nowhere get all these positions and whatnot. But at the end of the day, there are community advocates. Those are on the ground doing the work, who we can't afford to be partisan in the work. This is what I'm talking about. So we know that if our federal government shifts right now, a whole lot of people in DEI are going to be out of a job. That funding those millions of dollars that you were able to all of a sudden acquire when you have no track record of work, you're going to be the first one to be swept out, right? But those community advocates who have been doing the work, who position ourselves in a nonpartisan way, that is the part that keeps us on the path to holding position, holding power. It's not just about I'm being put in the position because I'm friend of a friend. It's the who's doing the work, who has the track record, and who is placed strategically to be able to move regardless of what administration is.
I think that's where we're at, but there's not a lot of people that are there. But to swing back to Kathy.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say, but I always say, if you're thoughtful in doing the work, and we're talking about EDI work, what you would do is you can embed it into legislation. So when another party comes in, they can't just come in and woof, you have no champion, it gets done and shelved. So if people are truly, including parties in power right now, that yes, you're doing all this work and giving the community all this money, but if you're truly committed to the work, then put it in legislation so it can't be undone, right? Or it is so much more difficult to be undone. Because look at the Charter of Rights and Freedom, for example. There are a lot of people in power that probably would want to get rid of that document, but it's almost virtually impossible to get rid of it, right? Because it's just not like a little policy on a shelf. right, is enshrined in legislation. And it requires so much effort and work on the back. It's not something you can silently just take off the books, right? So a lot of, and that talk about the systemness of anti-Black racism is that we need to ensure that the work we're doing, like the changes in Peel, it was not just a matter of, oh, we're doing this, because all bylaws have been rewritten, right? Updated all our policies. They're not 100% finished, but there's a process and everything EDI is being embedded into it. I'd like to see that go across the province, but there's a lot, even mandated data collection. There's so many things that if people are truly committed to the work, that they can implement. So it can't be just unraveled by another party when political hands change.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, if I can bounce off of that as well, that is also a good point, right? And in addition, there are so many different areas in which change can be made, right? Whether it's at the municipal level, the provincial level, the federal level, whether it is elected office, appointed office, whether it's a job in the civil service or outside of the civil service, there are things that can be done to, again, ensure that Black people are not being left behind, right? So for me, for example, as I mentioned, my kind of area of expertise is political economy and that intersection with healthcare. So we take a look at one thing that's key in this is the social determinants of health, right? So we have these are things that determine health, which are separate from genetics or family history. Now we're looking at things like income and income inequality. Now we're looking at things like quality housing, quality education. Now we might be looking at physical and social supports, right? Do you have access to a grocery store that sells healthy food? Do you have the money to be able to buy healthy food, healthy groceries for your kids? Whether we're looking at employment and working conditions as well, right? If you have somebody who's working 2 or 3 jobs just to get by, they might not necessarily have that chance to be able to take care of themselves or to be able to afford prescriptions or to be able to be with their kids as much as they would like to be. So there are so many ways as well in those bigger spheres of, yes, enshrining it in legislation or in charters or whatever you might have at the organization or within government. But there are smaller things too that these folks can do to better move us forward that still fit in that political sphere.
So let me springboard off of that, because ladies, as we watch our time, how do we engage the young people, young women, to become involved in that sphere? You just went through a gamut of different ways in which people can find their different entry points or where their expertise or their interests lie. So how do we bring along our young women to say, come, here are some ways to which you can navigate the system, you can get into the system, you can affect change. What do we need to do to give a broader, marketing, advertising, session, learning strokes to get the young women to see politics in all of its facets? What do we need to do?
I could start. I think the most important thing you could do is be a mentor, especially if you have gone down the road or you're in politics yourself. And I can tell you, I have mentored like Charmaine Williams when she first ran as a city councillor, had a new baby. I mentored her and helped her in terms of campaigning, what it took. We'd meet, explain, encourage them. Right. Same thing with Navjeet Kaur when she first ran. At the time, she didn't run as a city councillor. I think she was running for the NDP provincially. Right. Again, young lady, a Sikh woman, had a kid. And I think, and it's my deep-seated belief that we need diversity in women in politics. And any woman who would come to me and, I think, first of all, you have integrity, because that's very important to me, right? That this is not some like stepping stone and, right? I will reach out to you regardless of your political affiliation. If I believe in your ability and your commitment to make change, the Green Party, right? Whatever it is, I think that is important to mentor and guide, because we need these voices at the table. So I think mentorship is the key. I think it's important to help guide them in terms of, because sometimes, you know, especially in your youth, you have all these like, oh my gosh, you think you can come in and you can just change all the world. I think you have to let them understand the reality of this job. You know, I often say to our youth, don't grow up, it's a trap, right? Stay as young as you can forever if you can, right? But barring that, I think it's important that the main important piece for young people also is to ensure that they don't get cynical and feel that their voice isn't valued, right? Because your voice is important, and you need to let them know that we need them. We need their voice, right? Because if not you, who?
Right. So, Kuso, up to you.
Yeah, so just to pull on that, first of all, on that youth piece, and Candace, I feel I can relate very well to your feelings on running for public office. And my answer might contradict that, but I'm still working on it myself. There are two pieces to this as I see it. There's the women themselves, right? The Black women, the young people, that's one group. And then we also have those that are ahead of us, our mentors, our teachers, our parents, our aunts and uncles. So on that side, Kathy has spoken to very nicely, right? Mentorship. I would also add to that visibility. Young people need to know what is available for them to be able to take up those opportunities. Some of them, it could be visibility in that, oh, okay, yeah, I know what an MLA does, but I could never be that, right? Seeing somebody that looks like them in that role. On the flip side, though, on the side of that young person, so in particular, if we're talking here about young Black women, on the flip side, there's a little bit that lies with them as well, in terms of thinking of not counting yourself out prematurely. And this is the part that I am still working on, especially more so throughout my adulthood. But when I was younger, for example, I didn't apply for opportunities that I didn't think I could win, whether that was a scholarship, whether that was an internship. I did not see myself in that role, and so I wouldn't put myself out there. And it wasn't until much later that I realized that I missed out on a bunch of opportunities by going that route and by thinking that way, because I had already told myself, well, I'm not enough for this position. I don't have the skills, I don't have the expertise, whatever it is. But it is also on us to think that we can't count ourselves out before we've given ourselves a fair shot, right?
And those are valid points. Ladies, the time is on us. It went fast, very fast. And now we're just ready to even ramp up and go some more. So Candy's, my sincere apologies in the sense, but the time is here. Hopefully this is going to continue over as we go forward. You have given some really good nuggets there in the last bit with regards to what some of the young people have to do and should look at and go after the opportunities that are available to them. So as we move forward, okay, we'll keep going then. Candice, your turn. We will continue.
Thank you for that. I'm just noting that I'm at about 8% on my battery, so on the road. But I mean, I agree with Akuswa and Kathy in that, you know, sometimes we have to be fearful, we have to be scared and do it anyway, right? But the caveat that I will add to maybe marry what Kathy said and what Akuswa said is that the visibility is important and the mentorship is important, but the sponsorship is even more important. What do I mean by that is those who are already in the room, for young people, it is significantly, vastly, greatly beyond you can imagine to actually bring young people into the room. When they're not quite ready to make that decision, bring them in, let them see what happens on a daily basis and let them determine whether that's the space that they want to be in or not. Also, the esteem that is built when young people actually see us in those rooms, speaking truth to power, doing what we do on a daily basis, they leave feeling empowered that, you know, if I choose to do this, then I can also do it and do it well. I learned very, very, like, you know, not aging myself or telling you how old I am today, but very, very recently learned that, you know what, some of us are not as we don't even champion our own selves because we feel, we've been fighting this battle for so long that it's impossible to win and all that. So a black woman in a very high place said to me, Candace, you don't market yourself well. You don't talk about yourself. And it's not that I don't do the work well, it's that I don't market it. And I think for young people, seeing us market ourselves, not brag. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about our egos and all of that, but really positioning ourselves and saying, without having to wave a flag, this is what we've achieved, and let them see us celebrate ourselves. Also, let them see us celebrate each other. Young people need to see that and need to embrace the fact that, we don't have to be competing against each other. We can celebrate the differences, the expertise, all of that. That's sponsorship. That's championing what we want to see our young people encompass when it's their turn to take over.
So I'm going to go back to Akosua because I cut you off and you're giving some good things about looking about scholarships, et cetera, with me and my era there. So please, if you can remember to pick up where you had left off. Thank you, Candice, for that.
Yeah, the second it all came out of my mouth, I'd forgotten what I said. But to bring us back though, so something that Candice pointed out that I did want to mention when I was giving my answer is that, yes, we are talking about these ways that we can get young folks in this case, for example, my area that I'm in, we're talking about ways that we can get more young people, more Black young people, more female Black young people into these spheres. But that does not mean that it is going to be easy. That does not mean that once they get into this space, that they're done. And we've touched on this a few times over the course of the last hour, is that's not the end of the road for you, right? That's just the beginning of the next chapter. But we cannot be telling them, oh, it's great, and you'll do great, and you'll make a whole lot of changes, and it is tough, especially if we take a look at today's theme, women in politics. If we extend that and we go into civil service, we go into other areas of elected office, it is tough. It's tough to operate in these spheres. And again, these systems are not necessarily set up to see us succeed, right? They're not necessarily set up for us to have an easy way getting into the fold of management, getting into the fold of again, if we look at the theme today, of politics, of elected. So, see, it came back to me. So to wrap up that I had been speaking about, yes, we there is a lot, right? And as we've touched on today, there's a lot that maybe some may see as hindrances, or some may see as reasons that they would not want to run, but again, on us to not count ourselves out prematurely, but also on those in those spaces right now to be able to help bring us in meaningfully. This is beyond just, we said we'd have one youth on the board and we have them, we're done. No, we have one youth on the board and they are going to have opinions. They are going to have ideas. We need to listen to those and we need to action them forward. We can't do that if we're not in those spaces and if we don't see ourselves in those spaces.
Correct. Kathy, you wanted to do a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. I forgot, to mention when Candice was speaking up with regards to the hate, you said your reservation on running. And I always, when I'm mentoring youth, be you running for student trustee or women running for whatever level of politics, I always say, Mother Teresa, all she did was, she was a wealthy woman who I guess gave up all the trappings of wealth to go to the slums of India and feed and nurture and give love to a lot of dying people, the people that nobody, untouchable people, the forgotten of society. And she got so much hate, right, for doing that. Far less, you and I, right, when you're doing something as controversial as saying, what a concept, Black children deserve to be taught in a trauma-free environment. Wow, right? And I always tell people, if you center your why, you drown out all that noise, right? All that hate. And for me, whenever I turn my key in my door and I hear like 8 footsteps running to the door, although now my 24-year-old stopped running to the door when I come, when I started, he was about 10. So he used to run to the door. And then the baby was always last and you hear the little coming, right? that's what you focus on, right? So regardless of all that, the naysayer and the hate, you center and ground yourself in your why. And none of that will matter, because some coward on the other end of a fiber optic cable, like, how are you? I'm not going to give you power over my life, right? Your insignificant little electronic vibrating tubes, however you get up on the screen, right? I'm not giving you that, oh, relinquish my power to you. You're such a coward. You can't even say it to me, my face with your real name. Don't relinquish. I tell young people, don't relinquish your power, because if you do that, people would always try and squash your joy. And the fact that people are giving you so much hate, you must be doing something so amazing. So keep on being amazing. So I encourage people, don't let that be a deterrent, right? As a woman, and especially as women, we tend to be like, oh my gosh, what are they going to think about me? Forget what they're going to think about you, right?
And also, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that, just surround you. Just remember your why. Always remember your why.
And I think that is it. And as a woman that's entered in politics way before all of you, because remember, my time of running provincially is 2003, 2007. So I've been in this a very long time, way before all the names of the people we see now entering spaces. But if you're going to enter the space, you enter because, again, to the why and your purpose, because no matter what, we all carry a baggage. We all may have financial issues. We may have a whichever. You got to know to stand in your purpose as to why you are running, right? And I think for some people, they enter the space forgetting that. It's just a matter of trying to get a name, or what kids are saying, a clout, but they forget that, yes, everyone is going to dig. They're going to, look for things. You got to be able to stand in your purpose, and that half of the things, the majority of what you've done, that's your journey. That is your journey. So you can be able to speak and own what is your journey, because it is an everyday life experience. There are people who have debt. And if you have debt, then you can speak to it. If you have had to deal with any type of vitriol from people, you know how to deal with that, because they're going to come with you at different angles, different perspectives. And, to what you're saying, Ms. Bonsu, in the sense of in the workplace, a lot of people don't understand. It's not just about the external people when you're trying to run campaigns. It's also the people internally within your organization, institutions where you work, because again, as Black women, your cadence, your tone, your manner of presence as to how you walk, the way you dress, the way your hairstyle might be, is offensive to people, or they are so insecure they want to project onto you that you are the aggressor or you are the this, rather than, no, you are assertive, you are assured in your step and in your purpose of what you do, right? So you got to be able to stand in that purpose and your why to be able to defend against that. Because if you step into spaces so naive to think that everyone is your friend, remember, it's your friends that can do the most damage to you, because it's who you draw close. Right. So you have to be very mindful that in coming into the sphere of what is politics or politics adjacent or whatever the case scenario might be, know that everything that is about you becomes very transparent, because people are going to dig. So someone is going to find, hunt, and peck to get whatever they want to do. They will turn it to either the negative, if that's what they want, or people will elevate the positive. But step into the spaces for your purpose, or I'll use Kathy's why. And a lot of the people that want to get engaged, they can reach out to different organizations that accept. So Operation Black Vote, if you want to say, that's here, that's doing what they're doing, or you have your other, depending if you're a party person. So if you are a party person, all of the political parties have youth arms, right? They have their ethnic liaison arms, or whatever terminology they're using for their different parties. So you can get in there, get involved. And the best thing I say to people for my little pieces, understand the politics of the politics. Know the policies and the procedures. Who really runs the organization? Who has the say? How many people do you really require for votes or for committees or whatever is required for you to get on board? Really know the nuanced pieces of politics. Once you are versed and understand that, then you won't get caught up in the minutia, and you won't be worried about the people or the naysayers are trying to steer you wrong, because you actually understand the lane that you are in. And that would be part of my advice given to those who want to get involved in politics, right? Because, and in my case scenario, I stepped away because, for Kathy, who knows that much about me, I'm a big person of integrity. I watch what you do. I don't listen to what you say. I watch what you do. And I really judge you with MLK, right? It's in the time of controversy where do you stand and what are your actions is what I do. So I moved away from my party because I could not stand what I was seeing happening with those that were in leadership, and those who supposedly say they stood for certain things don't stand for it. So therefore I removed myself from that space, and I'll still action outside, right? But I think I'm getting ready to go back into that space very soon. But those are some of the pieces. So ladies, as we're going, we're wrapping up, and sorry that we had to lose Candice there, but what would you like for the greater public to take from this, learn from you, or gather from you, in the sense of when we're talking about women in politics and the leadership and what it takes and how to get involved? So Akosua, I'll start with you, and then I'll end off with Kathy.
Okay, here's the challenge now, is getting all the ideas in my head into a quick 1 or 2 minute soundbite while making it sound coherent. So for me, I would say the first thing that came to my mind, Yvette, when you asked that question, is that we are here to add value. We're not here to subtract from what you have. We're not here to replace, right? We are here in these spaces to add value. We're adding value to the people that we serve. We're adding value to the people that look like us, knowing that they might also be able to be in these spaces. We're adding value in terms of the changes that we make through our work, right? We're not here to detract necessarily from what other people have, but we're to enhance it. And so that for me is a big piece. It's a big piece.
Kathy?
I would say, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and we need some more people from Venus, right? At board tables. I think women's voices are valuable. I think even our perspective is different, invariably, from the male perspective, and I think it's needed. I truly believe if more women were in leadership, we'd have zero wars, right? I think that it's so important as women, to step up to the plate, because I truly feel the skill set that women have as nurturers, as women, as child bearers, right? As peacemakers, as we're many things, I think, to many people. And I think those traits are different from what males bring to the table. And I truly believe that we also need diversity in our women that are represented too. So I also think we need to look at diverse women of color, racialized women, to enter these spaces. And I would encourage women to face your fears, seek out support and mentors. Black Vote Canada, I cannot speak highly enough of that organization. They are a perfect resource for mentoring Black women into politics. And I think also to really examine and deeply reflect on your motivation, right? And I would hope that your motivation is pure. And by what I mean by pure, it's not about seeking power or money. It can't be about money, because let me tell you, as a trustee, if you're looking for money, you're in the wrong position. And even at the other political levels, right? Because a lot of those, if you look at CEOs of private companies, you're making more money. So it really should not be about money, because when it's all about money, that's where you start to see that corruption piece coming in. So again, center your why. And with that, run.
Nice. Now, Candice is back. Are you able to speak on our section here? We're given the wrap up as to what do you see and would like to give back, or for women to understand and stepping into the sphere.
Yes, I had to, we arrived and then my phone died. So that's why I dropped off for a minute. But, certainly I would say that, we just have to be afraid and do it anyway. Walk into it, be be confident in what we bring to the table, right? I think a lot of times we sell ourselves short. When you think about the business community, oftentimes you hear the story of, a woman will see a job description and check off how many things she actually meets on that description and talk her way out of applying. Whereas a man will see, 5 out of 25 things that he can say, yes, I actually meet that criteria, and apply anyways, right? So for us, it's knowing that, we have the credentials, we have the expertise, and we have the support. I think the biggest thing for us is feeling and knowing that we have the support to go ahead, and whether we choose to run, whether we choose to pursue an appointment, whatever the case may be, know that our community supports us. And sometimes our community is just our family, because sometimes our community is fearful to see us being out there. Why? Because sometimes our own community tears us down, right? But at the end of the day, if we have the expertise, we have the credentials, and we have the support, go ahead, be fearful, and do it anyway, because guaranteed you're going to be shattering a barrier for somebody else. Even people we don't even know that we have them in our sphere of influence, we're shattering a barrier for them. And last night I was at the Harry Jerome Award, and one of the awardees spoke about that concrete ceiling. And a lot of the times we don't even realize that we are those concrete ceiling smashers, right? By us going out and doing it regardless of how scared we are, that tells those coming up behind us that, you're a trailblazer, and sometimes that, that warrior field, we don't always want to take it on, but sometimes we have to. And smashing those concrete ceilings is necessary to make sure that we continue to progress in the work. So I'll wrap up by saying I honestly am standing on the shoulders of many of you who are on this call today. Yvette, definitely. Kathy, incredibly, always pleased to see you out there championing. And I always say, I want to be like them. I want to be like them. It's not always easy. I'm not young anymore, but it's not always easy. But seeing people out there doing the work, right? Akosua, I hear you. I hear you. It's not always easy to say, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go out there and lead. Sometimes our community requires that we do it even when we're scared. So that's what I have to say.
No,
And don't worry,
fantastic.
we take the young and the young at heart. So
That's right.
yeah. Kind of roll for you, no problem.
Listen, we all say we the old ladies. Yes, we have to have the energy still to be going. And Kosowa, I wish you all the best in your field of endeavors that you're in and in your future path for what you're doing, because you're bright and you have a lot. We haven't touched on barely anything you're doing. A lot of times we think Ontario is the center of Canada, right? But you're out there in Winnipeg doing your thing and making sure your name is called out. Continue to bring others along as you climb. And please reach out to what we're doing. Candice, in your area of what you're doing, continue to expose, because a lot of people don't know about it. We feel that, it's a more niche component, but the more that you continue to speak on it, bring people into the space, the more those forums are provided, the more our people are become more learned and have an understanding of it. And to what was put out, Kathy, continue to be the champion that you are in speaking out. I understand because we're both in education here, that what you're doing, yes, in the sense TDSB, a lot of it, we've been moving and kicking down doors and that, but you have also been championing. It's not going to be easy because, to the point, the one area education to which you would think people want to be more enriched and more versed and more knowledgeable about, it's very closed-minded, it's very myopic in the spaces within things are operated, but continue to galvanize people, continue to build partnerships, as you just said. If those who are skin to us are not the ones that are aided to come there, then you make those partnerships with others of a clear understanding, because they understand oppression also, right? So it's about people being able to come together for what we do. In the greater audience that is listening, I would encourage everyone to get involved. And if you want to say if it's about a political party, matter of fact, go and attend all of the party sessions. Understand what the political parties really are. So many people are entrenched with, I'm a diehard liberal because my 4 generations came here under this particular banner. But, yes, for the most part, Black people are not conservatives because of what they have done historically. And well, they continue to do to some extent, but right. But we will hold the people that fall into that party. The liberals are doing some nonsense too. Trudeau is not devoid of all of that, right? And same with the NDP and Green Party, etc. So let us get out there, understand the nuanced pieces of the parties, what you can run for, who you can support. And I would say those that are in Toronto that are paying attention, let's really look and try to support our individuals that are running, because whether it is to cut a simple check to someone, at least they have a little bit of funding for their flyers or whatever. It doesn't mean you're going to give their vote during election day, but you've aided some of them to at least be able to run a little bit of a better campaign, or give them a day of canvassing. Again, so many people get caught up of thinking that if I show up for a person, that means I'm voting for them. No, it could be that you're just giving support because you understand to put a name forward is a big step for a lot of people. So it's a matter of at least doing that support. And if those candidates can't be supportive of that, then that's a different issue to what we've been talking about, that we all have to have a better understanding. So to everyone, thank you for your time. Thank you for participating and listening. And hopefully we have given you some incentive to do greater and do more. And to the beautiful women that I have in front of you, blessings to all that you do going forward. And Matthew, thank you. Donna, thank you to all the people in the background that are our tech team and our supporters. Thank you very much for everything. Everyone have a blessed Sunday and have a great week.
Thank you too.
Look how far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your day.